Avoidants are often misunderstood. Many people assume that because they withdraw, shut down, or seem emotionally unavailable, they must not feel deeply. But that couldn't be further from the truth. Avoidant individuals often experience love just as powerfully, if not more so, than others. The difference lies in their relationship with vulnerability. Deep down, love threatens their emotional survival. To them, intimacy isn't just closeness, it's danger. It represents the risk of being hurt, controlled, judged, or even abandoned. And for someone with an avoidant attachment style, the very thing they crave connection feels like a trap. So they pull away. When you love someone avoidant, their behavior can feel confusing, hurtful, or even rejecting. They might seem warm and connected one moment, and then distant or cold the next. This inconsistency isn't because they've stopped caring. It's because closeness activates their internal alarm system. It's not personal, even though it feels that way. Their nervous system is wired to protect them from the vulnerability that love requires. They've likely learned, at an early age, that depending on others leads to disappointment or pain. So, as adults, their coping mechanism is to self-protect by staying emotionally self-sufficient, even if that means pushing people away. This emotional wall can leave their partner feeling rejected or not good enough. But the truth is, it's not about your worth. It's about their fear. The more they start to care, the more they feel exposed. Love challenges their core belief that closeness is unsafe. So they shut down not because they don't love you, but because they don't know how to handle what they're feeling. This is why understanding them is so important. It doesn't excuse harmful behavior, but it does give context. It reminds you that their withdrawal is not a reflection of how lovable you are, but a mirror of how scared they are to lose control. And the more we understand that, the less power their fear has to make us feel unworthy. When you're in love with someone who has an avoidant attachment style, your natural instinct to get closer can have the opposite effect. What feels like connection and bonding to you may feel suffocating or even threatening to them. This is where many people get emotionally confused. You try harder, reach out more, offer more love and reassurance, thinking that if you can just love them enough, they'll stop pulling away. But for the avoidant, that energy, that pursuit doesn't feel comforting. It feels overwhelming. The more intensely you chase connection, the more likely they are to retreat into emotional isolation. It's not that you're doing anything wrong, you're responding from your heart, but to them it activates a deep-rooted fear that intimacy equals loss of freedom, control, or independence. This response isn't usually conscious. They're not waking up each day planning to distance themselves. Their nervous system is wired to protect them from the vulnerability closeness brings. When someone starts getting too close, their mind tells them stories like, "I'm going to get hurt," "I'm going to lose myself," or "this is going to end badly." So they pull back, not necessarily because they don't care, but because caring too much terrifies them. It feels like being trapped, like being emotionally cornered. That's why your attempts to fix the disconnect can backfire. You may pour in more affection, more reassurance, hoping to calm their fears, but it only reinforces their instinct to escape, creating a painful push-pull dynamic that wears down both partners. The most heartbreaking part is that your pursuit usually comes from a place of love and desire for closeness. You just want to be seen, to feel connected. But with an avoidant partner, that pursuit can be misinterpreted as pressure. They may feel like they're being asked to perform emotionally in a way they've never learned how to. So they cope the only way they know how, by creating space. And in that space, you feel abandoned, when in reality, they're just trying to feel safe. This doesn't make their behavior okay, especially if it's hurting you. But understanding that your pursuit is triggering their internal alarm system gives you a chance to change your approach, not by giving less love, but by offering it in a way that doesn't threaten their survival instincts. Loving someone with an avoidant attachment style often leads you to believe that if you just love them enough, they'll eventually feel safe and open up. You convince yourself that your consistency, patience, and emotional availability will heal them. But no matter how much you give, how deeply you care, or how loyal you remain, the truth is this: you cannot heal them with your love. Only they can choose to heal. Only they can confront the fears, wounds, and beliefs that keep them emotionally closed. This realization can be incredibly painful because your love is real, and your efforts are sincere. But what Tony Robbins teaches us is that transformation only happens when someone decides they're ready to change. No one changes because someone else wants them to. They change when staying the same becomes too painful. The avoidant partner has to be willing to look at the patterns in their life and relationships. They need to acknowledge that their emotional distancing, their silence, their need for control is costing them meaningful connection. And until they face that truth, nothing you do, no matter how loving, can replace their own self-awareness. Your love might plant seeds, it might create a safe space, but if they don't water those seeds themselves, nothing will grow. You can't carry their healing on your back, no matter how strong you are. When you constantly try to love them into transformation, you end up emotionally drained, stuck in a cycle of giving and hoping, only to feel empty and unseen in return. The desire to help, to fix, to stay patient comes from a beautiful place in you, but it can also come from a wound, one that believes love must be earned through sacrifice. You might even be repeating a subconscious childhood pattern, trying to be enough to finally receive love. But love doesn't work that way. Healing isn't something you can do for someone else. It's a choice, a commitment, and a process they have to want for themselves. Your job is not to rescue them. Your job is to honor yourself, to know the difference between support and self-abandonment. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is step back and let them choose growth or not. When you find yourself deeply attached to someone with an avoidant attachment style, it's important to ask, why does this dynamic feel so familiar? Often we're not just falling in love. We're unconsciously re-entering an emotional pattern from our early life. If you were raised in an environment where love had to be earned, where affection was inconsistent, or where emotional safety wasn't a guarantee, then being with an avoidant might feel strangely comfortable. Their emotional unavailability can echo the feelings you had as a child, longing, waiting, working hard for attention or validation. And because it feels familiar, your nervous system interprets it as home. You might mistake anxiety for passion, distance for mystery, and inconsistency for chemistry. Tony Robbins often says, "We don't get what we want, we get what we believe we deserve." If deep down you've never felt fully worthy of unconditional love, you might find yourself drawn to people who can't fully give it. Your subconscious is playing out an old narrative. If I can just love them right, maybe this time I won't be left. But every time you try to prove your worth to someone who avoids intimacy, you're reinforcing the belief that love must be earned. That's not love, it's survival, and it becomes a cycle of overfunctioning, overgiving, and underreceiving. You begin to lose sight of your own needs because you're so busy managing their discomfort with closeness. Recognizing this pattern is not about blame, it's about awareness. The avoidant person isn't your parent, and you're not that child anymore. You have the power now to break the cycle. Tony Robbins teaches that breakthroughs come when we make new decisions rooted in self-awareness. So ask yourself, am I staying because I truly feel loved, or because I'm trying to rewrite an old story? The moment you start noticing your patterns, you reclaim your power. You stop making yourself worth dependent on someone else's ability to love. And that shift, from chasing validation to standing in self-respect, is the beginning of real healing. Being in love with an avoidant partner often feels like walking a tightrope between compassion and self-neglect. You see their pain, you understand their fears, and you want to be the one who makes it safe for them to love. But somewhere along the way, your needs get quieter, your boundaries get looser, and you begin to disappear into the relationship. If you choose to stay, the key is not to lose yourself while loving them. This doesn't mean withholding love. It means loving with clarity, strength, and emotional integrity. You have to be able to look in the mirror and say, I am showing up fully, but I am not abandoning myself in the process. Tony Robbins often says, raise your standards, not your expectations. Expectations are passive. They're hopes you place on someone else's behavior. But standards are what you hold yourself to. They define the quality of life and love you're willing to accept. If your avoidant partner consistently avoids intimacy, communication, or accountability, your role isn't to tolerate it endlessly in the name of patience. Your role is to say, I understand you have fears, but I also have needs, and those needs matter. Setting healthy emotional boundaries doesn't mean you stop loving them. It means you stop overextending yourself at the cost of your own emotional well-being. There's a difference between being available and being emotionally overexposed. When you stay too long in a pattern where you're the one doing all the emotional work, you begin to confuse resilience with self-betrayal. You may convince yourself that enduring the emotional distance is proof of your strength or loyalty, but true strength is not in how much you can tolerate. It's in how clearly you can communicate your truth. You are allowed to say, this doesn't work for me, even if you understand why they're the way they are. Compassion for their wounds should never come at the expense of abandoning your own. Loving an avoidant partner means holding space without losing your own. It means being honest about what you need while honoring where they are. But if the relationship consistently leaves you feeling anxious, depleted, or unseen, you must ask yourself, is this love growing both of us, or is it shrinking me? Because staying in love should never mean staying silent about your worth. One of the hardest truths to accept when loving an avoidant partner is that sometimes the most loving thing you can do, for both of you, is to walk away. Letting go doesn't mean you didn't care. It doesn't mean you gave up too soon or that your love wasn't real. It means you finally realized that love, in its healthiest form, isn't supposed to hurt this much. It's not supposed to feel like you're constantly proving, chasing, or begging to be chosen. You're not supposed to be stuck in cycles of emotional starvation, waiting for crumbs of connection. Tony Robbins reminds us that the quality of our life is deeply connected to the quality of our relationships. If a relationship keeps you stuck in anxiety, fear, or emotional neglect, it begins to shape how you see yourself and your world. Avoidant partners aren't bad people. They're often just deeply wounded ones, but love isn't about sacrificing your emotional well-being to soothe someone else's fear of closeness. You can have empathy for their struggle and still decide that it's not your burden to carry. That decision can feel heartbreaking, especially if you've invested deeply, waited patiently, and tried everything to make it work. But letting go can also be the beginning of real freedom. The moment you choose self-respect over silent suffering and emotional clarity over confusion. It's the moment you stop shrinking to stay connected and start expanding by releasing what's no longer aligned with your peace. There is power in walking away, not out of anger, but from a place of truth. It means you're no longer willing to live on emotional standby. You understand that your needs matter, your voice matters, and you deserve a love that doesn't require you to suppress yourself. You don't need to become smaller to fit into someone's limited capacity for intimacy. You deserve a relationship where emotional safety presence, and reciprocity are the standard, not the exception. Letting go isn't a rejection of the other person. It's a commitment to finally choosing you. Because in the end, the kind of love that lasts begins with the love you're willing to give yourself.